I graduated on a soft, sunny morning. Pomp and circumstance played on, and the line of students moved across the red carpet, robes rustling square caps a little crooked from the air conditioning. I stood in the computer engineering row, my hand holding a folded program, the stiff corner pressing into my thumb. In family section C, my mother lifted a small wave. My father sat straight with his hands clasped. My brother leaned on the railing, his white shirt not fully buttoned at the collar, and my sister-in-law gripped his sleeve as if to say, "Do not make trouble on her day." The list of names went on. People laughed, hugged, and held up signs that said, "We did it." I did not hold up anything. I watched the stage lights, counted my breaths, and waited for my turn. When my row began to move, my brother left his seat. He walked around to the waiting lane beside the graduates bent low, so only I would hear, but loud enough for our relatives behind us. "Do not expect to stay at the house anymore." The 4 words turned down the sound in my head. No one shouted, no one dropped a water bottle. The reader kept calling another name. Someone's shoes scraped the floor. My sister-in-law tugged his sleeve and shaped the word later, but he had already turned back to his seat with a blank face like he was talking about the weather. I did not answer. Some replies only pleased the other person. I looked straight ahead. The tassel brushed my cheek once, very light. My phone buzzed in the pocket I had sewn inside the robe. I had stitched a small fabric pouch there so the phone would sit in the right place. The screen showed the name of my chief financial officer. CFO wrote "Press ready. Live tomorrow at 7:30. The number is locked. Do not strike back. Talk about the mission." A second bubble popped up. CFO wrote valuation $1 billion. Release goes out with the interview. I drew a breath, held it in the middle of my chest, and let it out slowly. In my ear, the host began to call my school. My mother raised her hand again. My father gave a tiny nod that only the person next to him would see. I did not look toward my brother. Graduation days always carry mixed smells: new paper, fresh flowers, hairspray, sweat under a heavy robe. The host said a few lines about perseverance and hope, words everyone deserves to hear at least once. I stood there and thought about the key hanging on the wooden hook by our door, the hook I had not taken down before leaving this morning because I did not want to look at it. The names kept flowing. I pictured the family chat that had lived for years, cat photos, grocery links. My mother's question about coming home for dinner, the times I sent photos of the electric and water bills, and no one said thank you, and no one said I did not have to. Soon, there would be a new short message from him. "Tell me when you move your things." Short and typical of him. My name was called. I stepped onto the wooden riser. The lights hit my face and my eyes went dry the way they do. My mouth pulled into a small enough smile so the photo would not look cold. The dean shook my hand and the hardcover tapped my palm with a small thud. Someone below whooped too loudly. I did not look for who it was. As I turned down the steps, my phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. "Come home and talk gently, please." The word gently sat by itself like an extra chair in a living room. I did not reply. I slid the phone back into the pocket, returned to my seat, kept my cap straight, my robe smooth, my breathing even. As soon as I sat, my hand flattened the program by habit. A fresh crease cut across the page, lying over the faded old line. I thought about the other creases I'd made these last year's morning shifts at the cafe, night shifts in the warehouse, test runs that went all night Friday bug fixes for clients. I did not look towards Section C again. I let the rest of the ceremony pass like a slow tape thanks advice hats, thrown when the anthem ended a fine coat of paint over the rough surface of real life. When the line of students began to leave the hall, I moved with them. The hallway was full of flowers and names called across the crowd, and hugs of every length. Near the exit, I paused for one beat at the sound of his shoes. He walked past my shoulder without looking at me, cheap cologne mixed with smoke. My sister-in-law followed with her eyes down. My mother stepped aside and gave me a quick hug, enough for me to smell her shampoo. My father said 2 words, congratulations. They sounded tight. I said I will come home later. No one asked when. Outside, the sky was a flat, clear blue. I opened my phone, typed noted to the CFO, and turned the screen off. I did not need to say more. Tomorrow, there would be a camera, a red light, and a mic on my collar. Tomorrow, the host would ask the questions I had practiced hundreds of times in my head. Tonight, I would do the one thing I know how to do well. Keep discipline. Keep quiet. Keep a clear space so I can step over the line someone just drew for me. I put my cap back on and moved the tassel to the left, the way it was at the start. A group of friends ran by and pulled together for photos. Someone asked me to join. I shook my head and smiled. Some photos do not need me in them to prove I was there. I turned toward the parking lot. The glass doors closed behind me and held the music and the wishes inside. Ahead was a road just long enough for me to think about a house that was no longer mine, and a morning where I will say out loud what I have whispered to myself for years. I will go on my own, and I will not return in the old way. I left the campus and drove without the radio on. The silence helped. By the time I reached my apartment, the last of the adrenaline had burned off and the fatigue rolled in. I sat on the edge of the bed, set the cap and gown on a chair, and let myself stare at the ceiling for a full minute. I thought about what got me here and what waited on the other side of tomorrow morning. It did not start with courage. It started with being told no in small ways over and over until I learned to work around it. When I was 8, my father took my brother to the warehouse on Saturdays to count inventory and talk to foremen. I asked to go. He patted my head and told me it would be boring and that I should help my mother at home. My mother handed me a dish towel and whispered that next week she would take me to the library. I learned to like the smell of old paper and the quiet of rows of books. In 3rd grade, I won a district math prize. My father came to the photo and said it was cute that I liked numbers. When my brother turned 16, he got a used truck and a handshake that said, "Welcome to the real world." When I turned 16, I got a laptop my father called practical for schoolwork. I opened it in my room and cried for 5 minutes, then started teaching myself how to write scripts that did not crash my computer. In high school, I built a simple scheduling site for clubs and after-school shifts. The principal used it for a semester. My father asked how much I charged, and when I said nothing, he said that explained a lot. Back then, we lived by his rules. He believed business was face-to-face, cash on the table, and the person who brings home the bigger receipt is the adult in the room. My brother copied him without thinking about it. I learned to do my work quietly, and to stop asking for permission I was not going to get. College did not change the family script. I took morning shifts at a cafe near campus. I wiped tables while a barista with a better smile ran the register. I learned how to refill pastries fast and how to stack tips under the mat so the jar did not look too full. 2 nights a week, I took a warehouse shift across town. The pay was fine, and the foreman did not care if I wore headphones as long as I hit the quota. On weekends, I tutored algebra online. The money went 3 ways: rent, food, and a transfer home every month to cover the electric, water, and internet. I kept the receipts in my phone. I never posted about it. I did it because I would not give anyone in my family a clean line to call me a freeloader. If a light was on in that house, part of it was because I had paid a bill. Safebridge started in the dorm because it was the only place I had. The first version was a clumsy bundle of scripts that wrapped work messages in a basic encryption layer and logged access in a simple audit trail. I cared about 2 things that most small businesses never get at the same time: real security and real ease. People click the wrong thing when tools fight them. I wanted setup in minutes, not days. I wanted templates for common audits so a clinic or a small school could prove the basics without hiring a specialist they could not afford. I shared a draft with a professor who ran a small lab on applied cryptography. He asked if I had considered selling it. I said I was just trying to make something I wanted to use. He introduced me to a mentor who had built and sold a compliance startup years ago. She looked at my code, gave me 3 pages of notes, and said the product had a spine if I could stop chasing features and start writing process. She said applause comes and goes, but process holds the house up. I wrote that sentence on a sticky note and stuck it to my wall. The first paying customer was a financial advisory firm with 12 employees and too many passwords on paper. They wanted something better than a promise and cheaper than a full security team. I charged them a small monthly fee and spent the next few weeks sleeping with my laptop open. When they broke the install by skipping steps and blamed us for a scare, I learned how fast a nice email can turn ugly. I also learned to write an onboarding script that does not allow the next step until the current one is done, and to add a line in the agreement about shared responsibility. It was not dramatic, it was repetition. Fix the weak point. Try again. Do not crack when someone yells. I kept taking shifts. I kept sending money home each month. In the family chat, I sent a photo of a receipt here and there when someone asked if the bill was paid, and I got a thumbs up emoji from my mother and silence from everyone else. My brother had other news. He married. The ceremony was simple and warm. I wore a dress I borrowed from a friend. He gave a speech about building a real home, and my father looked proud in that hard way he has eyes fixed straight ahead. After the wedding, the talk in our group shifted. Nursery mood boards, paint colours, a list of names. He joked in front of relatives that the house felt small and that it was time for everyone to be adults about space. The jokes sat in the air longer than they needed to. Months later on a Sunday, my father said he and my mother were spending more time at my grandmother's. He said it made sense for taxes and for the future fewer complications, less paperwork, if anything happened to them. He said my brother would look after the house because he was there most of the time anyway. I did not argue. I did not ask what the papers said. I made a note to myself to stop autopay next year and start paying utilities one by one only when asked. That note sat in my phone, and I kept paying them on time because the internet does not care about your plan. Around the same time, my brother started speaking like a landlord without using the word. He talked about property tax in a tone I had not heard before. He sent a link to an article about optimizing home expenses. He made a joke at dinner about renters and free riders and looked at me for a second too long. I focused on my plate and on the sound of my mother clearing dishes in the kitchen. I told myself to graduate to grow the company and to move out the clean way. My mentor met me once a week in a quiet coffee shop above a bike store. She asked for metrics, not dreams. How many active users? How many renewals? How many hours until the average customer gets value from the install? She did not care about my GPA, and she did not care about my family drama unless it showed up on my calendar as lost time. When I told her I was covering bills at home, she nodded and asked if it made me resent the code. I said, no. She said, good. Resentment leaks into work. Fix the leak or the house smells like it. I found 2 classmates who could code well and did not need to be managed every minute. We met on Sundays and pushed a new build every 2 weeks. We stopped talking about features no one had asked for. We focused on what small clinics and schools begged us to make easier. Reset passwords without calling an admin. Export an audit report that did not read like a foreign language. A few months in a woman with more years in finance than all of us, combined agreed to advise us on money. She became our chief financial officer when it was clear the company needed someone who could say no to us and yes to the right risks. She drew a line from press to pipeline and showed us how to measure whether attention became customers or just noise. She told me that every time a camera turns on cash, either gets closer or farther. Her job was to make sure it got closer. At home, the ground kept shifting. My brother mentioned a possible baby in a year and said the house would need a room free and some changes. He said it kindly the first time, like a plan. Then he said it again to an aunt in my hearing, and it lost its soft edges. He had money pressure from the family business. They had lost a supplier and cash flow dipped. He did not say this to me. I heard it from my father while he checked a number on his phone at the kitchen table. I heard it again when a cousin complained he had not been paid for a small job. I did not insert myself. I sent the utilities transfer as usual. I fixed a bug that showed up on Friday at 9 at night. I went to class on Monday and tried not to look tired. The months before graduation moved in a narrow loop. Work, study, ship, pay, repeat. The house did not feel like a home anymore. It felt like a waiting room with comfortable chairs where everyone spoke in careful short sentences. My mother tried to smooth things. She made soup and packed containers for me to take back to my apartment. She asked if I was sleeping. She did not stand up to my brother. She does not fight. She asks people to sit down and breathe. That is her way of holding a family together. My father stayed in his lane. He liked the parts of my story that used numbers. He asked if revenue grew and if costs were under control. He said little about product. He changed the subject when I tried to explain what encryption meant to a clinic with a single IT person who was also the office manager. To him, a business was either a gas tank you could fill or an invoice you could settle. On a winter night, a client almost pulled a contract because of a rumour they read online. My mentor came to the office with a pot of coffee and stayed until morning. She had me draft a 3-line note that said what we do, who we serve, and how we protect them. We sent it to customers who asked, and to no one else. We fixed a small bug that could have become a bigger bug if we had ignored it. We documented the fix. I learned that most problems are less about enemies and more about moving parts. I stopped looking for villains where process would do. Through all that, I kept sending money home. Twice I covered the whole internet bill because my brother forgot or pretended to forget. He texted thanks once without a period. I took a screenshot and filed it with the receipt. I do not know why. Maybe I wanted proof that I was not losing my mind. 6 months before graduation, my parents spent most nights at my grandmother's. My brother said it was easier for them. He said he would handle the house. He sounded proud of the word handle. I noticed a new tone in how he talked about the place. My mother said they had signed some papers to make things simple if anything happened. She sounded relieved. She hates paperwork. I did not push. I told myself it was not my fight. I told myself my job was to finish school, grow the company, and move out by choice before someone made a scene. I did not plan on a scene. I expected a short, hard conversation someday after finals about timing and fairness. I did not expect the sentence he threw at me at graduation. I did not expect to feel the ground under our family move that fast. Still, the signs were there if I had wanted to count them. He was tired. He was married and trying to act like a provider before he had numbers to back it up. He carried the family business like a heavy backpack and wanted me to carry part of the weight by leaving quietly and freeing a room he could shape into a nursery or a rental whenever he needed. He would have called it practical. He likes that word. Practical. Everything that hurts someone but helps him is practical. I do not hate him. I know what he thinks he is doing. He thinks he is keeping something alive by cutting pieces off the edges. That morning at graduation, he cut me off the edge and called it adulthood. I walked to my parking spot and felt the familiar tug to send another payment home so no one could claim I used the house. I stopped myself. I had done enough. Tomorrow, I would sit in a studio chair and talk about a product built for people who never get enough help, and I would not say the word family once. That night, I made a cup of tea, reviewed a short list for the interview, and set 2 alarms. I lay down and told myself a simple truth. If I wanted a different kind of home, I would have to build it with the same method I used for code. Small pieces, clear steps, no drama. The rest of the story would depend on the paper I had not asked to see. I was about to learn what it said and how far one promise had gone once someone wrote it down. I started with the mail. When I stopped by the house the week before finals, a stack sat on the hall table. The top envelopes were new to me. Property tax addressed to my brother. Home insurance addressed to my brother. A glossy letter from the bank about an automatic debit confirmation for the mortgage also to him. My mother said it was easier this way. Fewer moving parts. She said those words like she had practiced them. Over tea, she told me how it happened. After the wedding, he had stayed behind one evening with a folder and a plan. He had a pitch that sounded responsible. If I am going to raise a family here, it is better to have things in one name. If anything happens to you and Dad, there is no probate. It saves fees, less headache, easier for taxes. He booked a mobile notary to come by on a Sunday. He called it housekeeping. He did not use the word transfer. He did not say deed. He said signatures. My father hates paperwork and loves clear lanes. He asked how much it cost. The notary said a small fee. My brother said the county recording would handle the rest. My mother signed where the sticky flags told her to sign. My father signed where his name had been typed in block letters. Later that night, my brother brought cupcakes and said now nothing will be messy if something happens. He smiled like the plan helped everyone. I was at a warehouse shift that night. I learned about it the next day from a note on the counter. Notary at 3. All set. Do not worry. For a while, nothing visible changed. The porch light still flicked on at dusk. The Wi-Fi still blinked in the hall. The water still ran. I kept paying the utilities from my own online accounts, because that is what I had done for years. The bills themselves listed the house, and sometimes my brother as the service name, but the cards on file were mine. It felt like a clean line. He was the owner on paper. I was still helping the housework. I told myself it was temporary until I graduated and moved out by choice. Then the ground shifted another inch. He talked about locking in a better rate and called it a refinance. He said the bank wanted a single borrower and a tidy profile, and that it was easier if my parents stepped out. He did not ask them to co-sign. He did not need me either. He sent a photo in the group chat of a pen on a dotted line. Rate locked. Good for the family. My mother sent a heart. My father sent a check mark. A week later, I noticed the small signs you notice only after the fact. A key hook with fewer keys on it. A new set of locks in a clear bag on the dining table. A whiteboard on the fridge with a line that said, "Call plumber," and another line that said, "Show Saturday," with no details. He said show meant showing the place to a friend for a future room share. He said it like a placeholder. When I finally asked him to walk me through what had been signed, he gave me the summary he'd like to give to everyone. The deed is mine because it is cleaner for taxes. The mortgage is mine because banks like one name. The house is the same house. Nothing changes day to day. That last sentence worked until it did not. The more I looked, the more I saw how complete the change was. The county site listed him as the sole owner. The tax account portal showed his login. The insurance card in the kitchen drawer had his name and a new agent. The utilities were still in motion because I had never stopped them. They were the last rope tied to me. That is why he could say with a straight face that I was not a renter. He could also say with a straight face that I did not live there in any binding way. It left him free to act like the host who could end the visit when it suited his calendar. My mother tried to soften it. She said it was common sense. She said people make their lives simpler as they get older. She said my brother had promised he would never put anyone out. She said promise like it was still wet on the page. My father did not talk about fairness. He talked about risk. If the business stumbles, we need one driver on that car, he said. He meant the house. He only speaks in objects. He trusts whoever holds the wheel. From where he sat, my brother was the driver. The more I replayed the steps, the more I saw the trade hiding inside the tidy words. He had offered our parents a story they could repeat without shame. This is for taxes. This is for probate. This is for order. The real terms were plain under the varnish. He had said, if I marry this year, you put the deed in my name. They had said yes because they believed that stable sons hold houses together. He had followed through. Then he had started to speak like every decision inside those walls was his to make. My part had been small and ordinary, and I had looked away because I had exams and clients and code. I had left the papers unopened on the table because I did not want to fight weeks before finals. I had paid the bills because I wanted no one to say I lived for free. You do not lose a house all at once. You lose it in signatures you do not read, and in sentences that sound boring. You lose it in the way someone says practical with a straight face. The week of graduation, I finally pulled the county record myself and saw the quitclaim deed with my parents' names sliding off and my brother's name holding the space alone. The recording date matched the Sunday the notary had come. The assessor's site showed the change in tax mailing address to his email. The insurance policy number had been updated the same week. The picture was complete. He owned the house. He controlled the mortgage. He did not control my wallet. That last part was about to matter. I closed the laptop and sat with the quiet anger that comes when you realise you were careful in the wrong places. I had protected the house with payments while the house moved on paper to someone who would ask me to leave. I could not fix the past. I could decide how I would step out. The next page of the story was not about documents. It was about a message that would land while I still wore my robe. It would be short, and it would make the rest of my choices very simple. It would be short, and it would make the rest of my choices very simple. The message landed before I reached the doors. Family group chat. He wrote first. You have 7 days to move out. The house needs the room. Do not make this hard. My sister-in-law followed. We plan to try for a baby next year. We need a nursery. You should be independent. It is better for you. A private text from my mother came a minute later. Come home and talk calmly. I typed one line back in the group. You are the owner. I understand. I will go. I turned off notifications and walked outside into light that looked too clean for the words I'd just read. On the way to the parking lot, I searched the address on a rental site. A listing sat at the top with photos I knew too well. My cactus on the sill. The wood desk with the L-shaped scratch. The caption said available now. I took a screenshot and saved it. The anger did not spike. It landed low and steady. The plan had been made before the sentence at the ceremony. I drove to the house without music. The door was unlocked. The television hummed low in the living room. My sister-in-law stood with a tape measure against the wall by the window. The air smelled like laundry soap. I packed without talking. A few changes of clothes, papers, the backup drive, chargers. Each item pulled free made a small click in my head. She looked in. Leave the bookcase, please. We want to put a crib there. And can we keep the Wi-Fi under your account for a week while we switch? I kept my voice even. I am leaving tonight. From now on, I am not on any account, and I will not pay any bill. Take the bookcase. The front door shut hard. He came in, set his keys down, and blocked the hallway like he owned the floor. Do not get an attitude. This is my house. I told you clearly. I rolled the suitcase toward the door. I know. You have the right. I am leaving. He lowered his tone into something he thought sounded fair. Give me a week to move the utilities. No need to make it hard on family. I glanced at the flyer stuck with a magnet on the fridge. Baby furniture prices. Then back at him. You posted the room this morning. You already chose the timeline. I am just finishing my part. I booked a one-way ride to a small room near the office. I texted my mother. I am okay. I am not coming home tonight. I set my keys back on the wooden hook where they had hung for years and pulled the door open. He added one more line as if he were giving me a gift. This is for your own good. I did not answer. The door closed behind me, and the weight on my chest lifted by one notch. At the new place, I opened the laptop and did what had to be done. I cancelled autopay on the utilities I'd been covering and removed my card from every account I could reach. I reset passwords and turned on two-factor. I wrote a short email to him and to my sister-in-law. I have left. I am not responsible for any services at the house. Please work directly with providers. Do not use my personal information. I waited for the sent checkmark to appear, then closed the tab. A few calls to confirm the changes. I saved the confirmation numbers. I looked through my photos and kept the screenshots that mattered. The listing, the group chat. That was enough. No folders, no labels, just proof in case memory tried to blur the edges later. I made a short note for myself so the order would not tangle. Message, listing, pack, leave, cut payments, email, done. The phone buzzed several times while I worked. I did not pick up. I was done catching their calls like a reflex. The room was small and clean. A single chair, a bed made with plain sheets. I sat, drank water from the tap, and read the email from a utility provider confirming the card change. It is strange how relief shows up, not as joy, as silence. I thought about the house and the years I'd covered the internet without comment. I thought about the way he could say family and make it sound like an invoice. Then I let the thoughts go. They had taken enough of my hours. Before I closed the laptop, I wrote one line in the Notes app. From today, the boundary is mine. I set the alarm for the morning show and the backup alarm after it. I put the suitcase under the bed and laid the cap and gown across the chair. The phone lit with a final text. My mother. Sleep first. We will talk later. I turned the screen face down and switched off the light. The room went dark at once. No night lamp, no voices in the hall. I lay on my side and listened to the quiet settle. I did not rehearse answers anymore. I knew them. Tomorrow, I would sit under lights and speak about a product built for people who never get enough help, and I would keep my words on the work. The rest was already decided. He had the deed. I had my wallet back. That was enough to start. The alarm went off before dawn. I dressed in the clothes I picked the night before, drank half a glass of water and checked my notes once. 2 rides later, I was in the studio hallway that smells like coffee and hairspray. A tech clipped a mic to my collar. The makeup artist powdered the shine off my forehead and said, "You will be great," in the flat tone of someone who repeats that sentence all day. My phone buzzed. From the CFO, "Keep it on the mission. Do not clap back. The number is locked. Release hits with the interview." I type-noted and put the phone face down. The producer walked me through a simple shape. Intro. 1 big number. What will we do? Why now? A curveball at the end. We took our places. The host smiled in the way hosts do. The red light came on. I did not think about my brother or the house. I thought about the dorm where this started and the people who would use what we built today. SafeBridge began because small teams deserve two things at once: real security and real ease. We shipped an end-to-end encrypted layer that installs in minutes and plugs into the tools people already use: email and internal chat. We added a built-in compliance pack so a clinic or a public school can show the basics for HIPAA or GDPR without hiring a consultant they cannot afford. We kept a free tier for public schools, small clinics and shelters, because those are the places where a leak can hurt quiet people who do not have press releases. The host asked if 1 billion scared me. I told the truth. Yes, large numbers make me careful. I fear losing discipline more than I fear the number. What we sell is a standard people can rely on, not a story. He nodded and asked how we got here. I kept it short. I worked shifts. I coded at night. I paid my share of home bills because I did not want the word freeloader anywhere near my name. We had a client who broke the install and blamed us. We rewrote the onboarding so it blocks the next step if you skip one. We added a shared responsibility line in the agreement. We learned the quiet way. On a winter night, when a server hiccup looked like a fire, my mentor sat with me until morning and said, "Process holds the house up." I took that line and built around it. The host asked about customers. I kept names to myself and talked about patterns. Teams between 10 and 200 people who need audited logs and sane defaults. Schools that cannot hire full-time security. Clinics that have one IT person who is also the office manager. We removed friction until the right move was the easy move. He tried the curveball. "You had a big day yesterday. Anything you want to say to the people at home?" I thought of the group chat and the key on the wooden hook and the sentence in the hall. I kept my face steady. I said, "I am grateful to everyone who used an early build and told us where it failed. We fixed it because they told us the truth. And I am grateful to every teacher, nurse, and caseworker who does too much with too little. Tools should help them, not add work." The light went off. The producer gave me a thumbs up. We shook hands. The makeup brush reappeared for a second pass because cameras catch everything. In the green room, a junior booker asked for 3 pull quotes for social. I gave her lines about setup time audit exports and the free tier. Nothing about the headline number. On the sidewalk, my phone started to fill. Emails with subject lines that all looked like the same shape. "Saw you on TV. Can we talk?" A clinic administrator in Ohio. A superintendent in a district outside Phoenix. A shelter director in a city I had never visited. I forwarded them to our inbound list with one line: "Thank you for reaching out. Someone on our team will set up a call." The CFO texted again. "Good job. You stayed on the rails." Back at the office, the lobby felt brighter than usual. Our receptionist held up a small fist pump and then went back to work. I walked into the war room where we do launches. The whiteboards were clean and waiting. I set my notebook down, wrote the date in the top corner, and drew 3 columns. Leads, trials, closed. The team started to file in. People smiled, but kept it short. We have a rule on days like this: 5 minutes to enjoy it. Then we work. For 5 minutes we clapped and someone brought in a tray of bagels, and the CFO laughed once, which is rare for her. Then she pointed at the board. "Attention is not revenue. We will measure the line between the two." We split into squads. 1 to triage inbound and book demos. 1 to spin up fast deployments for free tier sites that pass a quick check. I took the product corner with 2 engineers and the CFO to set the day's hard limits. What we will not build, what we will not promise. That is how you keep a promise you can make. Somewhere in the middle of that, the snow night replayed in my head in a few frames. A small office. Coffee that tasted burned. The router that wanted to die at 3 in the morning. The mentor's voice telling me to write the steps down so the next person does not have to guess. I had written them. Today, those steps would save us time we did not have. By lunch, the inbox looked less like a flood and more like a river. We had calls on the calendar, and a pilot lined up with a school that could never get a vendor to take them seriously. They were ready because we make it easy for them to be ready. I stood at the window and watched 2 pigeons fight over a crumb and thought of the word luck. People like that word when they see the surface. I do not hate it. I just do not use it. We did not get here by luck. We got here by staying calm when code crashed and when people asked for more than they were paying for, and when relatives said sentences that would turn most days bad. We made a list. We followed it. I picked up my pen again. The board looked good. The real test would start as soon as one of those new names asked us to prove we are what we say we are. It would come. It always does. It came before lunch. Subject line from a clinic group I did not know. Compliance officer here. Saw the interview. Need proof you are what you say. Board meets in 48 hours. If you can pass a quick audit, we will move to contract. If not, we move on. The email listed what they wanted. Encryption in transit and at rest. Key management, access controls, audit logs, incident response plan, risk assessment, a signed business associate agreement, evidence or it did not happen. I read it twice and forwarded it to the team with 2 words. This one. The CFO stepped to the whiteboard and drew a box around closed and wrote 2 rules under it. No free bespoke work. Paid pilot or full contract. Deposit before lift. Then she underlined it. We set up a sprint wall just for the clinic. 4 columns. Request, owner, due, evidence. I took crypto and logs. Our security lead took access controls and key rotation. One engineer took export scripts so the clinic could pull their own logs during the pilot. The CFO handled the BAA packet with our counsel and pricing with their purchasing group. Our operations lead took incident response and the risk register. We set a timer, 90 minutes for a first pass on each item. We met again at the top of the hour. The room changed shape. No chatter. Chairs pulled tight to the table. Their only sound was typing and a marker squeaking. I opened the policy binder we keep for days like this. The documents were not glossy. They were written in plain language with steps that a tired person at 2 in the morning could follow. I checked dates and owners. I fixed 2 typos and a stale link and pushed a clean version to the folder. I ran through our encryption setup and took screenshots. TLS settings, cipher suites, storage level encryption with keys in a separate service, rotation schedule, alerts on key access. I pulled sample audit logs that showed user actions with timestamps and IPs, and wrote a short guide for how the clinic could export the same view in their own test tenant. Our security lead sent me a note. Add 2 sentences to the access policy about least privilege on the admin side. I added them and lined the wording up with the roles we actually use. No fancy names. Admin, manager, staff, read only. We do not win style points for role names. The operations lead walked in with the incident runbook printed. Steps in order: notify, contain, eradicate, recover, review. She had added a 1-page phone tree and a promise to notify customers within set windows if an incident reached a certain level. The CFO popped her head in. Counsel is good with the BAA template as is. No custom terms. They want a paid pilot. She had already pushed a 1-page order form with a pilot fee and a timeline tied to their board meeting. Deposit due on signature. She looked at me. Do not let your heart write checks. Your body has to cash. I nodded. We set the first call with the clinic for 3 that afternoon. We did not send the whole packet in advance. We sent a short agenda and a list of what we would cover with evidence ready to screen share. At 3, they joined. The compliance officer had the face of a person who has asked the same questions for years and heard too many soft answers. She went down the list. What happens if a user loses a laptop? We showed device lock and revoke steps and the screen where you can force a password change across a group. How do you prevent staff from moving protected health information into a public channel by accident? We showed labels and defaults that make the safe path the default path. How do you handle third-party vendors? We showed the section in the agreement and the internal list we maintain with renewal dates and security reviews. She asked if they could run their own small test. Yes, we had a trial tenant ready with their domain on it and 2 sample users. We told her they could export their own logs from the tenant and gave the 1-page guide. No one likes evidence they cannot touch. She did not smile, but she stopped frowning. At the end, she said she would brief the board the next morning and needed the signed BAA and the order form if they wanted to present us as the chosen vendor. The CFO sent the packet while we were still on the call. No drama. 1 minute later, they sent back a signed pilot order and the deposit wire confirmation. The room exhaled. The CFO drew a small check mark under closed and then erased it. Not yet. We still have to deliver the pilot on time and clean. We set up the deployment window for 7 in the morning, their time when traffic would be light. We assigned 1 support person to be on call just for them for the first week. We set daily check-ins for 10 minutes and agreed on what success would look like by day 7. Fewer open tickets on password resets, a clean audit export, 0 policy violations on a random spot check. While the teams carved work, I wrote 3 things on the top of my notebook. Do not promise a custom feature. Do not add 1 more step today. Do not forget the free tier queue. That last line mattered. While a big clinic can pay a pilot fee, a public school district and a shelter cannot. We had told the world we would serve them. We would. Our second squad kept moving those setups forward. They used the same steps, the same defaults, the same care, just without the formal audit dance. It took 3 hours to move the clinic from nothing to ready for a pilot. We did not sprint because we were reckless. We sprinted because we have written down how to run. At 5, the compliance officer emailed a short line. Presenting to board at 9 tomorrow. So far, so good. The CFO turned back to the board and wrote 2 numbers. Lead to demo rate. Demo to paid rate. She circled the second one. This is the one that keeps the lights on. Then she set limits. No overtime tonight. No victory posts on social. Eat. Go home. We need clear heads in the morning. I put my notebook in my bag. On the way out, my phone buzzed with a notification from a family member's post and a string of comments that looked sharp even in the preview. I let the screen go dark. We had another list to finish before I would spend any words on noise. On the walk home, I remembered the winter when everything felt close to breaking. A client threatened to sue after they broke their own install. Our bank balance sagged. I sat up all night writing emails that tried to sound calm. My mentor read one and said, "You do not need applause, you need a process." Then she made me turn each sentence into a step we could use again. Write the run book, close the loop. Do it the same way next time and you will be less tired. I held on to that. Back in my small room, I opened the laptop and kept it simple. Check the pilot checklist, check the free tier queue, check the inbound calendar. No drama. The social post waited in the corner of the screen, like a light that never turns off. I clicked it once and read it once. My sister-in-law had written a neat paragraph about how success should not make a person forget family. She used the phrase, "Not all independence is loyal." Comments stacked under it. A few cousins clapped. One aunt wrote a short line that said, I am happy for her good work, proud of the degree and the company. That comment was gone by the time I refreshed. The sharper one stayed. I did not reply. I took a screenshot and closed the tab. I do not argue on the internet. I put the phone face down and checked the last wires to the old house. I had already cancelled autopay and removed my card. Now I called 2 providers and asked them to confirm the account holder and address. They read back my brother's name. Good. A legacy vendor rang my number by habit and asked about a late invoice. I said, please contact the owner of record and gave the email. He said the number was on file. I said, then update your file. He thanked me and hung up. I felt the old tug to smooth this out for them and let it pass. I wrote 3 short lines on a sticky and placed it near the top of my screen. Do not debate online. Do not spend money out of guilt. Put everything in writing. I slept for 5 hours. In the morning, the team met for 10 minutes. No one mentioned my family. No one had to. We set a timer and ran through the plan for the clinic pilot and the free tier installs. Then, I walked 2 blocks to the coffee shop above the bike store. My mentor was already there with her notebook open and a pen that had a tiny crack near the clip. She asked for numbers, not feelings. Leads to demos, demos to pilots, pilots to paid. I gave her the counts and the times and the gaps. She circled the slowest handoff and said, fix this first. Then she asked a different question. If the noise keeps going, what will you still do for you? I said standardise the product hold margins, build a scholarship for young women in security who have a father or brother who says it is not for them. Keep the free tier and make it faster to deploy. Keep my hours and my health. She smiled a little and said that last line is not fluff. It is math. Burnout costs more than any vendor fee. She took a sip and added one more sentence. Home is the place where they treat you like an adult. If they do not, it is only an address. We sat without talking for a minute. On my way back, I opened the notes app and wrote it down. At the office, the day moved fast. The pilot packet sat ready in a neat folder. The second squad spun up 2 school tenants and a shelter tenant using the same defaults and the same check steps as the paid pilot. We do not create 2 classes of users. We create 1 level of care. At lunch, I got a message from a reporter asking if I wanted to comment on a story about founders and family conflict. I said, no, thank you, and wished her well. The CFO passed by my desk and tapped the corner of my notebook. Eat, then go for a walk. We need you to think, not glow. I ate and walked 2 blocks in the sun. The pull to defend myself online faded after 10 minutes in real air. I came back and wrote the next day's plan. Morning check with the clinic. Free tier installs under 72 hours end to end, or we fix the step that slows us. Then a meeting with council about a smaller template for agreements so tiny teams do not drown in paperwork. Late afternoon, I blocked 30 minutes in my calendar in case my parents showed up. The event title said, If Family Arrives. It sat there like a quiet fence. Evening came and the inbox slowed. I sent 3 short notes to the schools that had written after the interview. We schedule your install tomorrow. Here is the checklist. We will not ask you for extra work. We will do the heavy lift. The replies came fast and warm. Principals and aides wrote like people who are always doing 2 jobs at once. A line here or there made me stop and breathe. Thank you for taking us seriously. No one says that out loud until they feel it. I closed mail and opened the free tier tracker. 2 installs were at step 3 waiting for a domain verify. I pinged our support person and asked if we could push a small tool to make that button. 1 click. He wrote back on it now and pushed a patch 30 minutes later. I tested it. It worked. I put a line in our notes. Time to deploy down by 10 minutes per site. It sounds small until you multiply it by hundreds. The clinic compliance officer sent a one-line update at the end of her day. Board meets in the morning. So far, the packet covers our questions. I forwarded it to the team with a simple thanks and logged off. Before bed, I wrote a single line in the notebook I keep next to the sink. Do not react. Act. It has kept me out of more fights than any good speech. I set 2 alarms again and turned my phone face down. The room held steady. No late knocks, no sudden calls. I told myself the same truth I had been saying for months. You are allowed to keep your energy for the work that feeds you. Everything else can wait. The next morning, I kept my energy for the work that feeds me. At 8, a message came from someone who used to subcontract for my family. They lost a contract, he wrote. Late payments and not enough staff on site. Thought you should know. I did not gloat. I wrote back thanks for the heads up and put the phone down. At 9, the clinic board met. At 9:30, their compliance officer sent one line. Proceed to pilot. We will review after week 1. Deposit received. Good. The calendar block at 11:30 sat in the corner of my screen. If family arrives. It was there because of what my parents told me the night before. A few days after I moved out, they had gone back to the house from my grandmother's to check on things. My mother said the first sign was small. A pair of slippers at the door she did not recognise. A coffee cup on the table with a ring still wet. In their old room, a towel hung that did not belong to them. On the dining table, a binder sat half open with a sheet slipping out. She saw the word deposit before my brother slid it back in. A key ring hung on a hook with a tag that read Room 2. He said a friend had stopped by and left things. He talked fast and would not meet her eyes. Then he said it was hot in the house and he should take them out for a cool drink. At the cafe, he told stories and checked his watch and dropped them back at my grandmother's early. My father said he had felt watched in his own hallway. They did not push. They drove back in silence. 2 nights later, they watched my interview. They called to say they were proud and to ask if I would come home for dinner on the weekend. I told them the truth. The 7-day text. The listing with my desk in the photo. The way I cancelled the payments and left the key on the hook. My mother went quiet and said they had suspected something the day they saw the binder and the tag. My father's voice went up. He rented out your room. He rented out our room. He said he was going over there at once. My mother told him to wait until morning. She said anger breaks things that do not need to break. In the morning, they went to the house. My brother tried to wave it off. He said the listings were drafts. He said a friend had asked to crash for a week. He said the deposit slip was old. My father asked to see the keys. My mother asked who room 2 was. He stopped talking. Then he said the line he had been saving. I had to do this. The business is tight. The bank is on me. Renting rooms buys time. It will help your daughter too. She needs to stand on her own. Do not make this worse. My mother said we can talk about needs, but we will not hide them. He said he would set a meeting at my office so everyone could sit down and repair this. He said he would do it that day. She told me all of this on the phone and added that she wanted the talk to be calm and real. I said, calm and real is the only way it works. Now it was 11. No calendar invite. At 11:10, nothing. At 11:20, my receptionist pinged me. Your brother and his wife are downstairs. They want to see the director. They do not have an appointment. I asked if they had said why they were here. She wrote they said family and pointed at the logo and raised their voices. I told her to ask them to wait and to follow lobby rules. No names on the public floor. No walk-ins to the work area. She said she would. I looked at the block on my calendar and clicked it open. If family arrives. The note inside read speak in a room with a door. No hallway talks. Keep it on the work. I messaged the CFO. Family downstairs. Please sit in on this. She replied on my way. Before I left my desk, I sent one more message to my mentor. Meeting with family? I will keep it to contracts. She replied, you already know how to do this. I put my notebook in my bag and walked to the elevator. On the way down, I thought about the day my parents had found those small signs. The damp ring on a table, the tag on a key. There is always a trail. You do not see it until you stop making excuses for it. The doors opened. I could hear the lobby before I turned the corner. A voice I knew was trying to carry authority across marble. The receptionist kept her tone even. She asked if they had booked a time. She explained policy. She called me to confirm. I stepped into view. My brother looked up at the logo behind the desk as if it bothered him. My sister-in-law held his sleeve. My parents were not with them. Good. This part should be smaller, not larger. I told the receptionist it was fine to send them to the glass conference room. She nodded in relief. As they walked past, my brother tried to make a joke about security in his old light tone. I did not smile. I led the way. The room was clean and bright and had a long table that takes the heat out of voices. The CFO slipped in behind me and sat down with a legal pad. I placed 2 sheets of paper on the table and uncapped a pen. I knew what I would offer and what I would not. The door clicked shut. The light over the table hummed once. It was time to set terms. I slid the door shut and took the chair opposite my brother. The glass made the room feel colder. The CFO sat to my right with a legal pad and a pen that clicked once and then went still. My brother looked around, like the table was a test he had not studied for. His wife folded her hands in her lap and stared at the wood grain. He started fast. We just need a little help to get through. The bank is pressing. A big client is spooked by rumours. 1 or 2 months and we will be fine. I kept my voice flat. In return for what? He blinked like the word return was new. We are family. I looked at the CFO. She gave the smallest nod. Keep it on the work. I pulled 2 sheets from my folder and set them side by side. Option 1, a bridge loan. Market rate, clean term, 30 to 90 days. Secured by specific assets, receivables and inventory. A second position lien if the bank allows it. Monthly cash reports to us. A covenant to keep current on payroll and taxes. No distributions while the loan is outstanding. A default plan if you miss. He stared at the page and said nothing. I tapped the second sheet. Option 2. A restructuring engagement. Our finance team goes in for 6 weeks. We map cash in and cash out. We close the leaks. We renegotiate with suppliers. We set a weekly cash call and hard spending limits. We design a simple approval flow so you do not bleed from 10 small cuts. We bill our standard fee. This is not charity work. His jaw tightened. So either way, you make money on this. Either way, we remove the guesswork I said. The first is debt with rules. The second is work with rules. He glanced at his wife. She did not speak. I kept going. Both options include the same conditions. You remove every vague post about me and do not post new ones. You do not mention me to your clients or your bank. You never use my personal data for any account or invoice. All asks go through email. No pop-ins, no hallway talks. No visits without a calendar invite. He laughed once like the sound could change the words. You are rich now, and you want to humiliate me with paperwork. I did not look away. I am not rich in the way you think. And paperwork is how adults keep promises. The CFO spoke for the first time. A bridge loan without collateral and reporting is a gift, not a loan. We are not in the gift business. He looked at her, not me. Is this how you talk to all families? She kept her tone even. We talk this way when money is on the line and time is short. His wife cleared her throat. Her voice was small but steady. He means we are scared. The house feels like it is slipping, and the business too. We wanted a baby next year. She stopped and pressed her lips together. I let the silence hold for a beat. Fear does not change math, I said. Math is why we are here before the bank takes your choices away. He looked back at the first sheet. What is market rate? I named a number tied to current lines of credit for companies of his size and risk. His face changed like he had bitten into something bitter. That is high. It is honest, I said. Debt costs more when you wait too long. He set a finger on the second sheet. If we pick this consulting thing, you will tell me what to cut. We will propose, not dictate, I said. But we will not pretend every part of your business makes sense. If a warehouse burns cash, it goes. If a contract never pays on time, it goes. The CFO added one line, and you will stop running expenses through the house. He bristled. What expenses? She kept her eyes on the pad. I think you know. He pushed his chair back half an inch. His wife's hand found his sleeve. I slid a pen toward him. I am not here to rescue you. I will work with you. Those are different things. Option 1 is money with rules. Option 2 is people and process with rules. If you do nothing, we do nothing. His eyes flicked to the door like the air was thin. He tried a softer tone. Could you at least call the bank for me? Tell them a deal is coming. It would buy time. I shook my head. I will not speak to your bank before we have terms on paper. That would be a lie. He shook his head like he could rattle a better offer loose. This is too much. I leaned forward. Too much was putting a stranger in our parents' old room and pretending it was a friend. Too much was posting my desk online before you told me to leave. These pages are not too much. They are the minimum. He stared at the wood for a long count. The room fan hummed. The city noise came through the glass as a soft wash. He finally looked up and tried a different angle. What if you just float us for 30 days, no interest, and we promise to pay it back? I did not smile. A promise with no plan is how you got here. He slumped back. His voice dropped into that old familiar register, the one that asked and demanded at the same time. We are family. You are acting like a stranger. The CFO clicked her pen once and set it down. We will stay as long as you need to read, she said. Then we have to get back to work. I heard the message in her words. Time is also money. I nudged the papers closer to him. Read the terms. Ask your questions. Choose one or choose nothing. He pinched the bridge of his nose and exhaled like the air itself was a bill. He looked at his wife. She kept her eyes on the table and said one word. Read. He lifted the first page and his finger tracked the lines like a ruler. I waited. The next words he said were the ones I expected and the ones that would carry us into what came next. Family, and you still put conditions. He said it like a verdict. The CFO spoke before I did. Family should be clearer than strangers. If not, the whole house breaks. He turned on her. You two talk like lawyers. We came for help. I kept my voice steady. You came for money without rules. That is not help. That is a leak. My sister-in-law finally looked up. We were wrong to post. I deleted a comment that congratulated you. I did that. I was angry and scared. The business is bleeding. The house is tight. We thought pushing you out would make you grow up and give us space. It sounded reasonable when we said it to each other. It sounds ugly now, my brother snapped. She is sitting on money and counting pennies. Why make it hard? I slid the papers an inch closer, read the lines that protect payroll and taxes, read the line that forbids late fees. None of this is about making it hard. It is about not lying to ourselves. He stood so fast the chair legs squealed. Family and contracts. What kind of person are you? The CFO set her pen down. The kind that pays people on time. Sit or stand. Your choice. But listen, a business is failing because the numbers are ignored. A house turned into a boarding house without telling its owners. You want grace for that? Grace starts after the truth, not before. He looked at me like I had crossed a line. You talk big now that cameras like you. I leaned forward. You use the word family like a free card to pull cash whenever you are stuck. Family is not a receipt. Family is where each person pays what they owe. It is not a place where one person signs the tab and the other signs the debt. The day you posted my room online, you picked the role of outsider first. The room went quiet. The glass hummed. My sister-in-law touched his sleeve. Please, she said, sign the second one. We cannot keep doing this. He did not look at me when he sat. He read the terms again slower. He stopped at the fee line at the weekly cash call, at the no distributions clause, at the posts and the data clause. He set the tip of the pen to the page and pressed. His name came out a little shaky. He signed the engagement and the code of conduct. He did not reach for my hand. I offered it anyway. Thank you for choosing responsibility. Our team will contact you this afternoon. He touched my fingers and let go. No one clapped. No one smiled. The door clicked as they left. The photocopy lay on the table like a clean cut. The CFO exhaled. Then she was moving. She drafted the kick-off email and looped in our finance ops lead and counsel. She attached a checklist with 4 first steps. 1, remove every vague or hostile post about me from all accounts. 2, send a private apology to me for the posts and to our parents for the rental mess. 3, deliver a full 12-week cash-in and cash-out table by tomorrow noon with bank statements to match. 4, sign the commitment not to use my personal data for any bill or vendor. She read it aloud once and hit send. 10 minutes later, a reply came back from my sister-in-law. We will remove the posts now. I am sorry. A few minutes after that, my phone buzzed. The vague status from last night disappeared. A few older ones too. Then an email arrived. Subject line, apology. The body was short. I should not have posted about you. I removed them. I am sorry. I forwarded it to the CFO for the file and replied, received. The CFO stood. I will set their calendar. We start with payables, receivables, and vendor calls. We will look for quick wins. Close a loss-making warehouse. Extend terms with 3 suppliers. Get the bank to roll the missed payments into the back of the note. She paused at the door. Good job not making this personal. I smiled without teeth. It is personal. We just will not run it that way. After she left, I sat alone for a minute and let the adrenaline drain. My hands had a small shake I had not noticed. I drank water and looked out at the street where people were eating lunch on a patio like nothing in their world had shifted. My phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. Do you have time to see me this evening at your grandmother's? I typed yes. 7. She sent a heart. I closed the conference room and walked back to my desk. The team was busy, voices low, screens full. No one asked me how it went. They did not need to. The calendar told the story. A new block had appeared. Family company restructure kickoff. I added 1 more 10-minute meeting to the end of the day. Debrief with CFO, confirm boundaries. At 3, our ops lead pinged me. First vendor, call set. At 4, a junior on the finance team walked by with a stack of templates. At 5, the first draft of their cash table landed in my inbox. Thin numbers, old habits, work, to do? I replied with 3 questions and a request for backup statements. My sister-in-law sent a second short line. Posts removed. I know this does not fix the hurt. I am sorry. I typed thank you and left it there. At 6, I shut my laptop and headed for the train. The day had been about conditions and signatures and the way words can push money in or out of a hole. The night would be about my mother's kitchen and what to do with what is left after the push and pull. I took the train to my grandmother's. The kitchen smelled like tea and dried orange peel. My mother had already set out 2 cups. She touched my face like she was checking for fever and asked the small practical things first. Are you eating? Are you sleeping? Did anyone quit today? Do you feel tired in your bones or just in your head? I answered each one. Enough. Enough. No. Head, mostly. She poured tea and sat across from me. For a minute, we just listened to the clock. Then she exhaled. I only want the 2 of you to make peace. I want this house to feel like a house again. Your brother was wrong to treat you that way. I am sorry for him. Can you forgive him? I held her hand. You did not do anything wrong. You do not have to carry his apology for him. Time will answer that part. Right now, I want to work well and make sure you and Dad are okay. When he takes responsibility, the air at home will get lighter by itself. She nodded her eyes wet and said, if you are steady, I am steady. We ate simple food at the table. She asked about the company in a way that told me she wanted proof I was not skipping meals for work. I told her about the clinic pilot and the free installs. She smiled and said she liked the part where we took school seriously. Before I left, she pressed leftovers into my hands and told me to text when I got home. 3 weeks passed in a straight line of calls, documents, and small decisions. The restructure ran like a field kit. The finance team mapped cash every Monday, closed one loss-making warehouse, and renegotiated terms with 3 suppliers who had been waiting for a call that never came. The bank agreed to push 2 missed payments to the back of the note in exchange for a stricter reporting window. Payables went from a mess to a list. Receivables started to come in on time. The spare room in their house did not flip every week. They picked one tenant and put the lease in writing. It paid on the 1st. They moved the plan for a baby out a year and started a small reserve for it instead. Those were their quick wins. The hard parts would take a quarter or more. The CFO sent me a Friday email each week with 4 bullets and a chart. I read them and wrote back thanks and 2 questions. My brother began to answer my emails in short, focused lines. He responded to the actual question. He stopped writing like an older brother issuing orders. He did not say sorry. He also stopped the small jabs. For now, that was enough. At Safebridge, the clinic pilot finished clean. Their board voted to move to a full contract. Our free tier queue kept filling. 2 public schools and a shelter sent notes that said, "Thank you for treating us like we matter." We deployed them within 72 hours. I kept my own rule. No posts online about family, no press quotes on that topic. If a reporter asked, I said no comment and went back to work. One night, after a long day, I sat on my bed and read the week's notes. I wrote 1 line before turning out the light. Help is handing someone a ladder, not carrying them on your back. I did not know how far my brother would climb. I was done guessing. I knew I would not return to that old house in any sense. Not with a key, not with my name on a bill, not with the old habit of smoothing everything for everyone. The house where I live now is a set of practices. Pay people on time, put agreements in writing, keep the promises you can keep. Say no before you sink. On the last night of the 3rd week, the CFO sent the formal report. Cut the loss unit, close the expensive warehouse, renegotiate with 3 vendors, pay off 2 late installments, plan the next steps for the quarter. The business did not take off. It stood up. That is sometimes the point. I forwarded the report to my parents with a short note. This is the update. I hope it eases your minds. My mother replied with a heart and a sentence. It eases. Sleep well. I turned off the lamp and looked at the ceiling for a beat. The quiet felt earned, not lucky. In the morning, there would be more emails, more installs, more small problems to close. That is fine. The line is where it needs to be. I drew it, I keep it, and I do not move it to make anyone feel better.